That's just wonderful, isn't it? I mean, don't you just love that? All right. Ladies and gentlemen, it is a distinct pleasure this morning to have a guest on our show. I've been playing this guy's soundbite, I don't know, maybe since 1996. I don't know how many times I played it. But now that the Weather Underground has their first presidential candidate elected to a second term of office, I thought maybe it'd be a good idea to bring Larry Grathwald on, FBI informant who burrowed into the Weather Underground in the 1970s. Bill Ayers, Bernadine Dorn, those folks. And, the same wonderful folks who brought you a dead policeman in San Francisco. He has a book called Burning Down America. I believe it was 1976. It's being reissued in honor of some of the new professorships that have been awarded to people like Kathy Bodine, who's going to go to Columbia, and who knows? I mean, Dzhokhar Tsarnaev, I mean, he could get a professorship at Columbia, too, if he plays his cards right. Welcome to the show, Larry Grathwald.
Glad to be here.
Glad to have you here.
Yeah, it's bringing down America, by the way.
Oh, what did I say?
You said burning.
Oh, I'm sorry. Yeah, it's bringing down America. I've seen you on YouTube a lot, and I just wanted the rest of the world to hear some of the things that you have to say. Tell us a little bit about the book, and a little bit about your years as a Weather Underground informant for the FBI, because you really were kind of taking your life into your hands, weren't you?
Well, it certainly was a possibility, but having been to Vietnam in 1965, I had experienced a lot more things to be frightened of than the weathermen. But no, there was times when I would have a little bit more fear than normal. As an example, one morning I woke up in Detroit, Michigan, and I'd been sleeping in a room, and I had put an ashtray and my cigarettes on this box when I went to bed. And when I woke up in the morning, I discovered it was a case of dynamite. That kind of shook me a little bit.
So you can't. You didn't know what was in the box.
No, I hadn't seen it in the light. And as I said, when I woke up in the morning, I realized what it was. And obviously, I wouldn't have been smoking cigarettes around it had I been aware of the fact that it was actually 3 cases of dynamite.
I thought these people were anti-war, Larry.
Well, that's what they tell you. That's the story today, that they were merely an anti-war group. But if you revisit all of the propaganda that they produced through the spring and summer of 1969, right up until the time that they surfaced in the 80s, they basically were all about bringing the war home. As a matter of fact, one of their mottos was "Bring the war home, kill your parents." We've got Bernadine Dorn at the National Council meeting declaring Charles Manson a hero, and quote, she says, "Dig it. They not only killed those pigs, but they sat down and ate their dinner, and then they shoved a fork in Sharon Tate's stomach." That's from Bernadine Dorn.
Well, you forgot the last part where she goes, "Wild."
Yeah, wild. I was there and heard it. And it just amazed me because at the time she had graduated from law school, so she had her law degree, and this was a very attractive young lady who was, proud of what Charles Manson and his thugs had done. And if you remember, Sharon Tate was 8.5 months pregnant. Of course, the fork wasn't shoved into her stomach. It was La Bianca, but that's beside the point. At that time, it was believed to have been Sharon Tate. Just amazing. I was at a meeting in Cleveland, Ohio. Mark Rudd, Bill Ayers, Linda Evans, several other people, key leadership people. This is when the decision had been made to go underground, and we were being divided up into various groups, FOCOs as they call them, which was really a cell of about 4 or 5 people. And during that meeting, a conversation ensued regarding what was going to happen if we overthrew the government. And of course, it changed from not if, it's when we overthrow the government. And their greatest fear was a counter-revolution, and they accepted the fact that they were going to have to send about 100 million Americans into re-education centers, and that of those 100 million people, approximately 25% or 25 million would have to be eliminated. And by eliminated, I mean killed. And again, you're in a room with 25 people who almost all of them are college graduates. Some of them have postgraduate degrees, and they are seriously discussing what they're going to have to do in order to eliminate 25 million people. It's surreal sometimes, and
well, usually communism starts murdering people after they're in place. These guys were talking about it before they even won.
Yeah, yes. Well, and in the bombings, I was part of a group in Detroit that was planning to blow up the 13th Precinct in the Detroit Police Officers Association building. It was decided by Bill Ayers to send me to Madison, Wisconsin before this bombing was completed, but someone went ahead and did it, and fortunately the bombs didn't detonate, but they found 13 sticks of dynamite at the DPOA building and 34 sticks of dynamite at the 13th Precinct. Fencing or roofing nails and fencing staples were part of the bomb, and of course that's for the shrapnel effect. You don't put shrapnel into a bomb to destroy property. You do that in order to destroy people, and that's what the people did at the marathon, the Boston Marathon bombing. They used BBs and ball bearings.
Well, no, I wanted to ask you about that because, see, I've seen Bill Ayers in interviews where he talks about how, well, we didn't mean to destroy anybody. We didn't mean to kill anybody. We were just setting off these bombs so that people would take notice of our message. Mm-hmm. And I'm sitting there thinking to myself, you lying SOB, because you put anti-personnel stuff in those bombs, and the people that are interviewing them, they never challenge them.
Yeah, well, they haven't read my book, or they have and chose to ignore it. In some instances, people just don't want to know the truth. But I'm here telling you that Bill Ayers sat across the kitchen table and told me that we were to build these bombs with shrapnel, and that we were to place them in locations at a time when it would kill and maim the greatest number of people. When the townhouse blew up in February of 1970, 3 weathermen were killed, Ted Gold, Terry Robbins, and Diana Otten. They were building bombs to be used at Fort Dix, New Jersey. Mark Rudd, in his book Underground, says that he was talking to Terry Roberts about 2 days before the explosion that killed those 3 people, and that he knew what they were building the bombs for, that they were going to use them at Fort Dix, New Jersey, at the Enlisted Men's Club and the Officers Club on a weekend. The idea being to not only kill soldiers, but to kill their dates and wives and husbands. So, there's solid proof from one of the people who was part of the Central Committee that their intention was to kill, and yet today they swear that wasn't the case.
Of course it is. I got to take a break here. Can you stay with us?
Sure.
Okay. Larry Grathwold, the author of Bringing Down America, being re-released. It's a 1976 book, I believe, but it's being re-released, and it would do all of you well, especially younger members of the audience who have no idea about what went on. It would be a good idea to familiarize yourself with the ideology and the people who launched your current president into politics. We'll be right back. Quinn and Rose. News, America's morning show from the War Room. By the way, we'll be on XM 244 starting on May 8th. We're going to move from XM 166 to XM 244. Talking to Larry Grathwald, former FBI underground informant, working inside the Weather Underground, and the author of the book Bringing Down America, which is just being re-released. Is it up on Amazon, Larry?
Yes, it is.
Great. Okay.
And
now
you can order it through my website, which is bringingdownamerica.com.
Bringingdownamerica.com. Okay. Only got a couple of minutes before the news break. Can you stay with us through the break?
Sure.
Okay. One of the things that really troubles me too is that when I see some of these YouTube videos of this collection of scruffy human debris that seems to orbit around Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn, he makes these speeches that it's pretty clear that he hasn't changed a bit.
No, absolutely not. And as a matter of fact, in an interview he gave to the New York Times, which was published on 9/11, ironically, he declared that he had no regrets whatsoever, and that the only possible regret he might have is that he didn't do enough. That there should have been more bombings and more done to try to bring the war home, as he put it. There's also a picture of Bill Ayers standing on an American flag with the caption that reads, "Guilty as hell, free as a bird, isn't America wonderful?" Now, those are the words that Bill Ayers uttered when he left the New York courthouse after having been essentially found, well, I won't say innocent because it was on a technicality, but essentially let go for all of his terrorist activities during the 70s and the early 80s. Those were the words that he had to say.
Yeah,
Guilty as hell, free as a bird, isn't America wonderful? Yeah,
well, apparently his appreciation of America doesn't go very far. No. He ought to be thankful that we have the rule of law so strict that he was able to walk out. What was it, a bad wiretap or something by the FBI?
Essentially, they were saying that the wiretaps and that the illegal entries that were used during the Weatherman investigation were, against the Constitution, and that they couldn't have been they couldn't be used. Ironically, that whole thing was based on a executive order that was signed by Franklin Delano Roosevelt during World War II.
Well, then hold that thought, because I'm coming up against a hard break here, all right?
Sure.
And we'll talk about that and some other stuff, too. I want to talk about San Francisco as well. Larry Grathwald, former FBI informant, author of the book Bringing Down America. Let's go to the phone here. This is Larry I'm losing my voice here. Hold on. I'm all out of liquids. Thank you very much. Larry Grathwald is with us. He is the FBI agent who went underground with the Weather Underground back in the 1970s. Wrote a book entitled Bringing Down America. And since the Weather Underground is back in the news, actually they should have been back in the news around the first presidential election of Barack Obama, but they weren't. But anyway, now that, what's her name, Kathy Bodine has been given a professorship at Columbia University. My father used to, back in the 50s, when I was a kid, a little kid, my father used to say, Columbia University is a bunch of communists. Well, I guess it hasn't changed much. Here's Larry Grathwald, whose book, by the way, has been reissued. And it's on Amazon, or you can go to bringingdownamerica.com. All right, Larry, welcome back to the show.
I'm glad to be here.
Now, San Francisco, the bombing in San Francisco that cost the life of a police officer. I forget where I heard this, and maybe you could tell me whether it's true or false, that at one of the meetings of the Weather Underground, I think it was Bill Ayers who admonished his fellow Weather Undergrounders, I guess, for not being tough enough, and made the statement that basically that his wife had to plant that bomb.
Yes.
Is that right?
That's true. He made that comment to me. And the people that were part of the cell that I was working with in Buffalo, New York, this meeting occurred shortly after the San Francisco bombing. It wasn't known to me that this bombing had taken place. I didn't even know a police officer had been killed until he told me about it. And he was criticizing us for not being active enough. We weren't doing anything right, and he's saying it's a sorry situation when the leader of our organization, who at that time was considered to be Bernadine Dorn, has to plan and make and deliver the bomb to the police station. Now later on, a young lady by the name of Karen Latimer corroborated what Bill Ayers had told me, and she even went so far as to say that she was the person that drove the car that Bernadine, was transported in and exited to go place the bomb, and then of course picked her up. For some reason, a San Francisco prosecutor would not give Karen Latimer immunity, so the legal pursuit was never followed up on at that time. Later, when the San Francisco Police Department and the FBI had created a group called the Phoenix Task Force that was looking into that bombing and also the attack on the I can't remember the other police station, what it was called, but essentially some people from the Black Liberation Army had went in and shot the place up and killed a sergeant. So anyway, they were investigating those two things. They had went back and talked to Karen Latimer again, who was very upset with the fact that nothing had been done in the mid-'70s when she first came forward. And then the next thing you know, Karen Latimer is dead of an overdose. And according to my information, she had claimed that she was a born-again Christian. So I find it very suspicious that she turned up dead under those conditions. So
so essentially, we have Bill Ayers in Buffalo admitting to you, right in front of you,
yes,
that his wife is guilty of murder.
Yes. Yes.
Not an accessory after the fact. Guilty of murdering the police officer in San Francisco.
Yes. Yes. And he's doing it. Remember, he thinks that everybody in that cell is a dedicated weatherman, and he's doing it to try to make a point that we needed to get busy and start committing more acts of what he referred to as just strategic sabotage. It wasn't like he came back to Buffalo, New York, to make this announcement to us. He was, he was really being very critical of us at the time because we hadn't done more. So yes, I mean that's exactly the way it happened. And
there's no statute of limitations on murder.
No, there isn't.
And wasn't there an attempt at the beginning of Obama's first term? Wasn't there an attempt to reopen this case in San Francisco?
Yes, that was the Phoenix Task Force, and it at the time it had quite a few police officers assigned to it, retired FBI agents, and other attorneys whose job was to try to bring this to to a head. They wanted to ultimately be able to prosecute Bernadine Dorn, but they did catch the members of the Black Liberation Army that had attacked the other police station. Again, I can't remember which one it was, but a sergeant was killed in that attack. And here's another ironic fact. They were, the Black Liberation Army had sent a member of the Weather Underground into this police station to check it out. Her name was Marilyn Buck. And she came back out, and the members of the Black Liberation Army are outside with law rockets. And they were intending to shoot these
with rockets. What? Wait a minute. What were they out there with?
Law rockets. These are anti-tank rockets, in the military. But they're kind of complicated. There's several pins you have to pull, and you have to extend the tubes before the device is armed and ready to be fired. So they couldn't figure out how to do that. So instead, they just walked in the front door and started firing weapons, and put a shotgun underneath a slot, where a window was, and they killed this sergeant. So you mentioned Karen or Kathy Bodine.
Yeah, Kathy Bodine.
Okay, she was one of the two people that ran out of the townhouse after it blew up.
Right.
She claimed that she didn't know that those guys were down in the basement building bombs,
Sure.
which is a crock.
Right.
But anyway, her and her husband, Charles Gilbert, were involved in a Brinks armored car robbery. And I think it was October of 1981, a Brinks guard was killed, and two New Jersey state troopers were killed. They were on an on-ramp going up to a freeway. When the police stopped them, they told Kathy to get out of the car. She got out, but she never mentioned the fact that there was armed men in the back of this van, and when the doors opened and the bullets started flying, two troopers were killed. Now, Kathy spent 22 years in jail. She is now a professor at Columbia University, and she also has a grant to teach at the New York City Law School.
What is it about academia that, what is it that's infected academia in this country that they can't wait to open? And I'm talking about University of North Carolina, Chapel Hill is another one of them. But, I mean, they're all over the place. Columbia, Harvard, Professor Derek Bell at Harvard. I mean, what is it about these institutions that they are so blind that they would open their arms to somebody like this?
Well,
Angela Davis is another one.
Okay, but keep in mind that when the Weathermen surfaced and began surfacing in the early and mid '80s, the first place they tracked to was to the schools. Bill Ayers got his PhD. He went to the University of Illinois, and he became a professor of education. So he's had 3 or 4 generations of teachers that he has been teaching, so that now our educational system is just inundated with people who hate the United States, who believe that the Constitution is a document written by old white men 200 years ago, and that it needs to be destroyed and replaced.
Oh, sure. They believe that the idea of freedom, individual liberty, is just a trick, to make people who America has failed feel like they failed. So, yeah. Well, and there was another thing, too. Guess who else is back in the news? Did you see this? Joanne Chesimard.
Oh, yes, Chesimard. Yes, I saw that the other day. She's almost also participated in that Brinks armored car robbery.
Yeah, exactly. There's one state trooper at least dead in that one. Two. Okay. And she's been living the good life down there in Cuba.
Yeah.
Now I'm wondering, now that she's the first woman on the FBI's most wanted terrorist list, does that give us any more sauce for getting her out of Cuba?
I don't think so.
Probably not. Huh?
The Cubans are still very anti-American. The DGI, which is the Cuban equivalent of the KGB, is still very active in spying on the United States and on trying to stir up turmoil throughout the world. So there's no way that they're going to get her back unless they plan some kind of a SEAL team interdiction and essentially grab her and bring her back.
Well, the FBI has doubled the reward now to $2 million. Might be worth it.
Yes.
Might be worth a try.
Yeah, it might be. But although I'm at 65, I'm not up to that anymore. If I had maybe 10 or 15 years less, I'd be physically able to consider such an action. But
no, this administration would find a way to prosecute you for doing that.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, because, and I'll tell you, how many of these people do you think this guy is going to pardon before he leaves office?
Oh, I don't know. I expect that David Gilbert will get pardoned. He's was Kathy Bodine's husband, and of course their son, Chessa Bodine, was adopted by Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn.
Boy, that apple didn't fall very far from the tree, did it?
Listen, Chessa was a special advisor to Hugo Chavez down in Venezuela, and our good buddy Bill Ayers makes 2 or 3 trips to Venezuela under the guise of education every year. So the contacts between the extreme left radicals has continued. Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn are involved in the Occupy movement, in the Code Pink movement. They're busy trying to reorganize SDS factions on college campuses.
Oh yeah, well they're still at it, and I look. I know I get I get angry emails from people when I say this, but and look, the Weather Underground went underground. We told them to work through the system, so they did. Yep. And now they're here, and they got this is their candidate. I mean, this is the guy they launched out of their living room. They didn't even support the Clintons. The Clintons weren't communist enough for these people, and this is truly the first Weather Underground president.
The very first fundraiser for Barack Obama when he ran for the Senate in the state of Illinois was held at Bill Ayers and Bernadine Dorn's home.
Mm-hmm, that's right, and then he subsequently lied about it. Look, I've got to get off here because I'm up against a break.
Okay.
But thank you, Larry, for your hard work.
Thank you.
Thanks for risking your life, both in Vietnam and here in this country. And we'd love to have you on again.
Well, you know how to find me.
Yeah, I sure do.
Okay,
okay, thanks.
You have a good day.
You
good
too.
Weekend.
The name of the book is Bringing Down America. Bringing Down America by Larry Grathwald, and it is up on Amazon and also bringingdownamerica.com.